Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're pulling together some sources that honestly feel like they're from different worlds at first glance.
Yeah, on one hand, we've got this very internal spiritual focus, a devotional looking at contentment.
Right, based on Hebrews. And then boom, we shift to this incredibly practical real-world event.
Exactly. The massive volunteer response after the September 23rd flooding over in Hualien, Taiwan. A huge community effort.
So our mission really is to find that connecting thread. We're looking at that tension between wanting stuff, material desire, and finding maybe true satisfaction.
How that whole internal struggle plays out when a community faces a crisis.
We're calling the theme eternal contentment. And the big question we're wrestling with and asking you to think about is, where does that real sense of enough actually come from?
And maybe even more importantly, what's the link between our own comfort, our everyday lives, and what actual virtue does being comfortable help or hinder?
Okay, so let's dive in. The sources seem to argue that getting a handle on both inner peace and doing good out there in the world starts from the same place.
Yeah, it starts with resisting that endless desire for more. The core text here is Hebrews 13.5. It's pretty direct.
It says, keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have. Simple, but hard.
Right. But it doesn't just leave you hanging, it gives the why. For the Lord has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. That's the foundation it offers for contentment.
Let's unpack this idea of greed, though, because the source uses a specific term, panran. How do they define that exactly? It sounds like more than just wanting a new car.
Oh, definitely. It's described as the state where you just want more and then more. It doesn't matter what you actually need.
So it's not tied to reality, almost.
Kind of. The key thing about Tanran, as the source presents it, isn't just a single desire, like wanting that car. It's described as more of an emotional condition, like you're just constantly striving, and the goalposts, they just keep moving further away.
That reminds me of the story they shared about Baruch, the wealthy guy. Someone asked him, how much money would finally be enough to satisfy someone?
And his answer was just perfect, wasn't it? He apparently said just $1 million more than he has now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It just shows how pointless that chase can be, right? If enough is always just over the horizon.
You're basically signing up for permanent dissatisfaction. The source is really clear on this. Material things, stuff, it just can't satisfy that deep inner part of a person. It can't.
Why not? I mean, people sure seem to think it can.
Well, the analysis argues they're finite, right? They break, they get old, they can be stolen, they're vulnerable.
Okay, so if the material stuff is bound to let you down,
then the argument follows that the spiritual sides, specifically, knowing there's this constant divine presence, the thing Hebrews talks about, that's the only truly reliable foundation for feeling sufficient, for feeling like you have enough.
this is where that tension starts to build, isn't it?
Yeah.
Between what we have and what actually holds us.
It creates a kind of ultimate safety net, if you think about it that way. Your house, your money, yeah, that can all disappear.
Right.
But if your core feeling of sufficiency, of being okay, is based on something that, as the text says, never leaves or forsakes, then external events can't fundamentally bankrupt your soul.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting, maybe a bit challenging. The deep dive connects this idea to comfort versus hardship. There's this anecdote about an American Christian couple.
Yeah, they were visiting believers behind the Iron Curtain back in the day. In Eastern Europe, lots of hardship there.
And the Americans, seeing how tough things were, told the local Christians, "We're praying for you for your suffering," which sounds like the right thing to say.
You'd think so, but the local believers' response just flips the whole thing on its head.
What did they say?
They basically said, we think we should be praying for you, for American Christians.
Wait, praying for the Americans? What?
Because, they explain, suffering here is tough, sure, but your life is very comfortable, and being a good Christian when everything is comfortable, that's much, much harder than being one when you're suffering.
Hold on. Yeah, I mean, that sounds profound, but isn't that a little simplistic? Or even dangerous? Are we really saying suffering is good? Or that having a comfortable life is somehow spiritually bad? People work hard for stability.
No, it's not saying suffering itself is good or that wealth is inherently evil. It's more about acknowledging what comfort can do spiritually. Think of it like spiritual gravity.
Okay.
Hardship, by its very nature, it forces you to depend on something bigger than yourself. It makes you focus on what's essential. That promise, never will I leave you, becomes like a lifeline when things are tough.
Right, you cling to it.
Exactly. But comfort. The source suggests comfort can act like a spiritual anesthetic. It can sort of dull your awareness of needing that divine constant. You feel self-sufficient.
Ah, I think I see the difference now. If everything's going smoothly, you might start thinking, hey, I've got this all under control myself. You trust your circumstances, your savings account, your safety net.
More than you trust that underlying promise. Precisely. The American life, with all its options and cushions and layers of comfort, it could potentially become a bigger spiritual obstacle than actual persecution or poverty.
Wow. That's a really sobering thought. Our ease might actually be hiding a deeper kind of discontent.
It's definitely something to chew on.
So if we kind of accept this idea for a moment, that comfort can lead to complacency, and that this discontent, this tan rand, can bubble up, the sources don't just leave us there. They give us a way to check in with ourselves.
Yeah, it becomes practical. This isn't just navel-gazing. There's a reason to do this self-check.
Why should you, listening now, actually bother with this?
Because that inner dissatisfaction, it doesn't just stay inside. The sources say it tends to spill out in noticeable ways, like constant worry or complaining a lot, or just that nagging feeling of greed, wanting more even when you have plenty.
Okay, so if you're always finding fault or anxious about the future, or just feeling that more itch, maybe it's time for this internal check.
Exactly, an overdue contentment check.
So the sources give us 3 specific questions. Let's walk through them. First one, how satisfied are you, really, genuinely, with everything you have right now?
Not what you wish you had or what your neighbor has, just what's yours right now. Be honest with yourself.
Okay. Second question digs a bit deeper. Are there actual signs of dissatisfaction showing up in your life?
Like, are you worrying constantly? Do you find yourself complaining, maybe more than you realize? Is that feeling of greed, that tan rand pulling at you?
And crucially, if you spot those signs, what's your plan? What are you actually going to do about them? Just noticing isn't enough.
Right. It needs a strategy, which leads to the third question.
This one's like a recipe for dealing with it. It asks you to create a kind of mental defense. You have to complete this sentence. Next time I start feeling dissatisfied, I need to remember.
And then you fill in the blank. Presumably, you fill it in with that core promise of sufficiency, that never leave you idea or whatever anchors your sense of contentment. It's about having a ready response.
That's really practical. It takes it from just feeling bad to having an action plan in your head.
And that focus on action leads us perfectly into the next part. Because if you do manage to find that internal contentment,
The focus shifts outward, right?
immediately, that feeling of having enough inside isn't meant to just stay there. It's supposed to translate into doing something for others, especially when your community is hit by a crisis.
Okay, so let's shift gears now and talk about Taiwan. Specifically, what happened in the Fuxing Township area of Hualien around September 23rd? There was major flooding, mudslides.
Yeah, a really devastating event physically. Roads washed out, homes damaged. A terrible situation.
So how does this connect back to contentment?
Well, the sources use it as this powerful real-world example. After the disaster hit, the immediate goal, across Taiwan apparently, became making sure Hualien didn't become like an isolated island, cut off and alone.
So they needed help, fast.
Exactly. And getting that help required this incredible unity, this collective action, where people basically put the community's needs way ahead of their own comfort or convenience.
And the scale of the response was just,
Wow.
the sources say nearly 15,000 volunteers pitched in.
15,000 people. Think about organizing that many people that quickly.
And it wasn't like some government program where everyone signed up and got assigned tasks, right?
Not primarily, no. The sources make a point of saying these were ordinary citizens. Volunteers came from all over Taiwan.
Yeah.
And get this detail.
Yeah.
They showed up wearing their own rain boots, and this is the kicker, bringing their own shovels.
Their own shovels.
Yeah.
That says so much, doesn't it? That's not waiting to be equipped. That's, I have what I need, let's
Yeah.
go help.
It speaks volumes about personal commitment, right? And taking that sense of self-sufficiency and immediately applying it for someone else's benefit, just incredible initiative.
That kind of response, just showing up, ready to work, digging mud. It's why they got that nickname, isn't it? The Shovel Supermen.
Chauncey Chowren.
Mhm.
Yeah. What a great name. Ordinary people becoming heroes simply because they're willing to, get their hands dirty right away. No waiting for instructions, just action.
Truly Supermen.
And that image, thousands of people with shovels, that spontaneous physical effort, it provides the perfect bridge to the final big idea the sources explore.
Which is connecting those good deeds, that action, back to our inner character.
Exactly. The idea that maybe these acts of service shouldn't just be things we do, but part of who we are, instinctive.
The source draws a really strong link here to a parable from the New Testament, right? Matthew 25.
Yeah, the parable of the sheep and goats,
Yeah.
where the king welcomes the righteous ones, the sheep, because they fed the hungry, clothed the naked, visited the sick.
And he says that famous line, "Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me."
Right. But the really fascinating part, the insight the sources pull out, is the reaction of the righteous people.
What do they say?
They're confused. They ask, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we do all these things?" They don't seem to remember doing them.
They forgot. It seems weird. We're usually told to remember our good deeds, maybe learn from them, or at least feel good about them. Why would the source highlight their forgetfulness as a good thing?
That's what turns the usual thinking on its head, doesn't it? The source suggests that if an act of kindness or service is truly embedded in your life, it stops being this special, noteworthy event you consciously log.
So it transitions from being an action to being part of your character.
Exactly. It becomes innate, like it's just who you are now. It's not something you have to think about doing anymore, you just do it.
They used that analogy of the traffic light, which I thought was really helpful.
Yeah, explain that one.
Well, nobody stops at a red light, obeys the law, and then goes and tells their friends, "Guess what heroic thing I did today? I followed a basic traffic rule. I'm such a good citizen."
Right. You'd sound ridiculous. Why? Because stopping at a red light is just expected. It's a baseline standard of behavior in society. You don't get points for it.
You don't even think about it usually.
Precisely. So the implication, the challenge maybe, is that acts of compassion, helping others, showing love, they should ideally reach that same level. They shouldn't feel like extra credit. They should just be the default setting for a life that's truly rooted in that eternal contentment we talked about.
So the takeaway isn't just feeling sorry for people when disaster strikes, like in Hualien. It's not enough to just feel moved or think, "Oh, that's terrible."
Nope. That feeling has to translate into something tangible. Real action. It could be physical labor like the shovel supermen. It could be giving money or resources.
Or, as the source specifically mentioned for believers, it could be consistent, focused prayer for those affected. Intercessory prayer as a real form of action.
The point is moving from just feeling something passively to doing something actively and efficiently.
And that story from Hualien, the sources did mention that Taiwan, like any place, has its problems, things like fraud issues recently.
They acknowledge that.
But despite those background issues, this event, this outpouring of help, the shovel supermen, it really showed something powerful about the character of the place.
It proved that local saying, didn't it, that Taiwan's most beautiful scenery is love. It showed that when push came to shove, when comfort had to be set aside for the collective good, that underlying character really shone through.
So it all circles back, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That idea of eternal contentment. It's not found in chasing the next $1 million or the next big thing.
Seems not. It's found first in recognizing the sufficiency of what you already possess right here, right now, anchored in something deeper than circumstances.
And then crucially, taking that inner sufficiency and immediately putting it into practice through selfless action. Becoming, in your own way, one of those shovel supermen when your community needs you.
And the challenge the sources kind of leave hanging there for you, the listener, is pretty specific about that action part.
Yeah. What was that again?
It's about using whatever specialized skills or profession you have. Don't just use them to earn a living, use them for service, and use them efficiently.
So if you're, say, an accountant.
Maybe you volunteer to do the books for a local charity. If you're a web developer, maybe you build a site for a community group. If you're a project manager, lend those skills to coordinate relief efforts. Use your professional strengths to serve, not just to profit.
That's a concrete challenge. Okay, so we'll leave you with this final thought to mull over, building on that traffic light idea.
The idea of good deeds becoming second nature.
Right. If the ultimate goal, spiritually speaking, is to make helping others, making altruism so instinctive that you barely notice you're doing it, like stopping at that red light, then what's one foundational, maybe small, selfless behavior you could start practicing today and keep practicing daily until you genuinely forget you're even making an effort, until it just becomes part of who you are?
That's a deep one to end on. A life lived from true sufficiency should just naturally overflow into acts of love and service. And remember, that sense of peace, joy, and love, it really should be for everyone, especially those facing the hardest times.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into contentment, action, and character.